You're tuned in to Just One Hot Mom with host Nanika Ansari. Get ready. She's about to bring you that fire, that flavor, that heat, all that passion, and more from around the world and in your neighborhood. Stay tuned.
Hey, hot peeps, it's your girl Nanika Ansari, and it is a beautiful day in the neighborhood as always. I'm hoping that you guys are having a fantastic Friday because I am. I wanted to give you guys some housekeeping items before we start today's show. I wanted to remind you that on November 30th, that's Thursday, November 30th, at the Beechwood Library, I will be hosting the Mommy Connect. I need for all my mommies with your resumes, with your branding ideas, whatever you have going on in your life, I need you to meet me at that library because we're going to connect. We're going to get some jobs going on. We're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about boosting whatever it is you have going on. So that's Thursday, November 30th at the Beechwood Library. So today, if you guys didn't see the flyer, I have retired Detective Jamal Ansari sitting next to me. Can you say hello, Jamal?
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And in case you guys did not realize that the last names do match up, this is my father. So probably during the show, I'm going to slip up and call him Dad, because to call him Jamal just isn't, it's not going to sound natural. But I brought him on today because I wanted to talk about something that's going on in our communities lately. And it's about us taking back our communities and policing them for ourselves. I know you guys have heard all over the news about police brutality in our communities and just certain interactions that young African Americans and older African American individuals have been having with the police. And it's not just us anymore. It's a community issue. And so I want to bring my dad on and get his perspective as to how we can be in our communities and how we can learn to police them and how we can learn to interact with the police. So we're going to start that conversation here. So my dad, how long were you a police officer?
From July of 1985 until April of 2013.
So as you can see, that's many years on a police force. And so that's many years of being a daughter of a cop. So you can imagine how my childhood was. We got away with nothing. But in that time, I've been around police officers my whole life, and I've seen the change in how police act in our community. What do you think is the difference between when you started out on the police force initially back in 1985 as a rookie cop versus to when now, just as you've retired? What's the difference in the type of officers that are now on the street?
Well, the difference that I see is the type of crime that we face with. When I started in 1985, that was about the height of the drug epidemic as far as cocaine and marijuana and all of that coming into the country. So you were a more aggressive, proactive police department versus now it's more of a reactive. Again, it depends on what the crime is and what the priorities are. At that time, it was to stop drugs at all costs. We went from that to, being community policing, and now you're getting back into this thing where, the police officers are having to deal more with social issues than crime.
Okay, so do you think that plays a major role in why we're seeing these instances of how the police are reacting to the community? Do you think the fact that they are now having to take on roles, like you mentioned, social workers, now they have to play those roles? And so, as we know that social workers can get burned out, sometimes do you believe that we're burning the candle at both ends with them being the police and a social worker?
No, I don't see it that way. One of the things that I do a mentoring program, and we talk about three words. We talk about decision, perception, and consequences. What you're seeing now is those three words. A person makes a decision to do something. The perception that they have is that they're doing what they need to do. The consequences can be one of two things. If you're driving a car and you don't have a driver's license, you may need to go get medicine for your baby. So you make that decision to go get it. The perception is that you're doing what you have to do to take care of your child. You get stopped by the police, they make a decision to stop you on whatever they see or presume. Their perception is that you decided to drive without a driver's license. You decided to violate the law. Now here comes the consequences. The consequences is that you feel as a young African American male, you may feel that you got profiled. You got targeted, not because you did something wrong, but because you got targeted. The police officer's perception is you violated the law. So the consequences is that you're upset, you feel that you're being profiled, and the consequence for the police is that you either get a ticket, you get arrested, your car gets towed. So you got those three words. I make a decision to do something. There's a perception made with that decision, and the consequences can depend on someone else, just not me, as to what I felt that I was doing the right thing. I'm leaving home, going to get this medicine for my kid, and I'm coming back.
Okay, but if we play that role and say let's reverse it for the police officers, because we have to say like that some police officers are targeting, they are profiling these people. So if we reverse that role on them and say what their decision is and their perception is and what their consequences is when you decided as a police officer to pull someone over, you've made that decision. Your perception of whatever they have going on, and then their consequences if you decide to take an action that is aggressive towards that person. How do we reverse that and have the police explain it in a way like you just explained it to us for somebody who appears to be committing the offense?
Okay, we can go back to those three words again. Here's the thing you have to understand about that. When I do my mentoring, I tell people you have to understand what the police see when they stop you, not what you see. You've got a decision and you've decided to do something. The police see something different. Maybe when you stopped at the stop sign, you looked around like you were lost or you didn't know what to do. That may have caught his eye. He may have stopped you just to see, hey, is everything okay? But in that exchange, maybe he finds out that you don't have a driver's license. Maybe he finds out that you've got a traffic warrant for some other city. There are a multitude of things that can come into play, not just necessarily profiling. People say profiling, but you have to understand you got a particular area where there is drugs, there is robbery and all like that. Police officers are going to be more proactive. So they're going to be more, I hate to use the word aggressive, they're going to go out there and they're going to make more stops. They're going to be more involved with the community because the community is saying, hey, look, in this area, people are selling drugs, they're doing this or that. The person that's living there has to understand that you're going to get stopped probably along with the bad guy. Simply because the police, if I'm profiling, then every guy with an afro and a dashiki shirt on is the guy I stop. But if I stop the guy that's got a bow tie on, the guy that's got on work clothes, the guy that's got on athletic clothes, I'm not profiling, I'm being proactive. It's hard to understand when you're an African American male and the officer is Caucasian. But what we fail to understand is that happens with African American officers as well. Mm-hmm. If you're assigned to a particular area and you're told that, hey, we've got a lot of drug trafficking there, we got a lot of people stealing cars, breaking in, you're going to be more proactive, you're going to become more involved with that community than if you're saying, hey, the biggest thing up here is guys parking from 2 to 6. So you're not going to be as active with the community then.
And I think our real concern is that in these instances where the police officers seem to have their lack of training is what is being called into question. It's like when they're pulling people over, or when you said they're not aggressive, but they're trying to be proactive, and they're proactive in a way that's negative towards the people in the community. Is how I want to figure out how we can marry them together, how we as a community can start to build a relationship with the police and have the police recognize that you don't have to be so, I don't want to say I want them to be proactive, but that aggression that they have, and it's like a training exercise for both people. The community needs to be trained on what steps we can take to help our relationship with the police, but then the police need to be trained on what they can do to help the community recognize them as officers. Because sometimes I get like people just see them as a problem. And they no longer see them as a solution. Like, I want to call the police up to help me. They no longer are seeing them as a solution. They're seeing them as a problem in the community. How can we as a community recognize them again as a solution to some of our problems? Well,
again, that goes to the social aspect of it. It goes to your upbringing, your education, how you and within your home see the police. To a police officer's family, he or she is dad, mom, uncle, grandfather. To his neighbors, he or she is probably a great guy. But to the person that stopped by that police officer, well, he's messing with me. So it's not just that simple. It's not where you put a line and say, hey, this is going to be a good cop, that's going to be a bad cop. Each situation brings its own problems. I like to tell people about this. They say, well, the police always say that they're afraid of something. You take a guy like Myles Garrett for the Cleveland Browns or Joe Thomas. These men are 6'5", 6'6", 300 and some pounds. To a person of my size, that's a threat already. But people say, well, these guys aren't doing anything if you're not doing anything. Myles Garrett and Joe Thomas run the 40-yard dash in less than 5.5 minutes. That's 120 feet. So when you're standing somebody that's 10 feet away, it takes them less than a second to get to you to do something. So that police officer has to carry himself in a manner to where if the person that he's stopping is a bad guy, not just because he looks like a bad guy, he has to put himself in a frame and in a position to where that person says, okay, am I going to get hurt if I try to do this? So when we're talking about the community versus the police and what they can do, I always go to that same situation. Be respectful. Do what they say. You own the police department. You own that officer. If I stop you and I ask you for your driver's license, your proof of insurance, and your registration for your vehicle, forget about why I stopped you. Provide that information. Now that's clear. Well, officer, why did you stop me? Now, if I can't come up with an answer for that, then you have the alternative to go to internal affairs, to go to the police department and says, hey, I got stopped by this cop and I think that he profiled me. I didn't get a ticket. He didn't arrest me for anything. Why was I stopped? That officer then has to come back and answer that. Mm-hmm. So when you start talking about that, each situation, when you and your sister were younger, I told you an adult is always right even when they're wrong. Because an adult deals with an adult. A child cannot go to an adult and have an argument. Mm-hmm. Because you're just going to get in more trouble. But if you have a disagreement with a teacher and the teacher is saying, well, I'm right because I'm an adult, then you tell your parents, and your grandparents, your guardian, that person deals with it. It's the same thing with the police. The police are right even when they're wrong because you have an alternative to deal with that after the fact.
And see, I think that's what the community is missing. I think we don't know our rights. And so how can we get education on our rights when the people who are supposed to help educate us on our rights we're afraid of?
Well, it goes back to the social upbringing. My family was taught, hey, you cooperate with the police. If there's a problem, I'll deal with it. That's not for everyone because me being a police officer, it's a different type. At that time, it's a different way of dealing with it. But if you do what's asked of you, you give them their propers, and with all the cameras and everything around now there, you can tape a conversation as you're having it. You have something to fall back on and says, well, this officer stopped me. I didn't like the way that he talked to me. I felt that he talked down to me because I'm an African American, I'm a woman or whatever. You have an option. A lot of people feel that they're not getting what they want out of the people who monitor the police. But you've got to be willing to go forward. If you claim that the police caused you some physical harm and the people investigating that says, well, we need your medical records to show that you were injured, and you said, well, no, I'm not giving you anything, then you kind of negate the complaint. Because I can't say that I got a black eye or that they twisted my arm and dislocated my shoulder when I don't want to prove that.
I get it. Hey, hot people, I want to remind you that if you guys want to call in, the telephone number is 440-252-0518. Again, that's 440-252-0518. I'm glad you brought that up, though, talking about how we need to figure out our rights and stuff in the community. I think the question is like, we want to be proactive in the community. We want to have our police do what they're supposed to do. But then again, it's like, I think people have a trust issue with the police now. They have a trust issue with city officials. It's a real big trust issue. How can the police and we help secure that trust issue? How can we rebuild trust in the community again? Because you're right, everybody didn't grow up how we grew up. They don't know the laws, how, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are some uneducated people out there about the laws, yet they are the people who feel targeted the most. How can we get some education? Like, what's available to educate them?
Well, I don't know if it's still there now, but while I was working, the department had a Citizens Academy class where you go and learn about the police department and what they do. You have police athletically. You have community-based organizations from your city councilman, your mayor's council, where you can go and ask these questions. Now, that becomes a problem just like when you talk about voting. People say that, my guy's not going to win, so I'm not going to vote. Well, you're actually voting for the other person when you don't vote. But it comes to a point to where you have to become more engaged. Again, I reiterate, in my mind, the people who elect the people who run the city run the police. Now, you can run the police or you can let the police run you. If you're not going to be involved with dealing with the police, then you're going to be left with whatever the police do. It's
almost a catch-20 because we're talking about people who, you're right, may not elect to vote city officials. We're talking about people who are not educated on how to run city government. We're talking about people who are just basically living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, and they're just trying to survive out here. But those are the people who I think are affected the most by the police. And so I would just like to know, like, even from you community officials, if anybody's out there listening, how do you plan on educating the community? Like, there are shows that are available on elevationsradio.com that are educating the community, but it takes more than just listening to a radio show, watching a YouTube feed. It takes us all opening up and having these conversations. So I'm interested to know, like, how do we plan as a community to go out and to start educating people? If you're educated about the law and you know that there's somewhere in the city that someone needs that education, how do you plan on opening up that conversation? Like, we're having the conversation right now. So, Dad, because growing up, we did grow up and we knew the law. We knew how to deal with police officers. I always tell my dad, I have a son. He's an African-American male. And there were so many times that I'm like, well, he's protected because he's young. But as he becomes a young man and begins to look more like a man, what do we tell those young men in the neighborhood who are just in the neighborhood, living their lives, going to school, yet they feel like they're being targeted? How are we telling them to react to the police? Because it's got to be a bit different.
Well, again, it goes back to those three words: decision, perception, consequence. But then it moves into this realm here. Don't be dead right. A lot of things that happen with the police happen because the person that they're talking to or they're interacting with is right. They haven't done anything. They're not guilty of anything. They haven't committed any crime. But we tend to want to stand up and say, well, I didn't do nothing, so I don't have to cooperate with you. The problem with that is, again, we're talking about, what does that officer see? What is the information that officer has received? This is a neighborhood where there's a lot of break-ins. So it's 4 or 5 young black males walking down the street. He's going to check them. Well, they haven't done anything. So there's an antagonistic relationship right from the beginning. Why are you picking on me? The officer has one set of information. The person that he's dealing with has another. So when those two clash, without there being communication, without there being an interaction, you've got a situation that goes way beyond what it initially was. It goes to a point to where now the officer has to decide whether I'm dealing with someone that is just committed a crime or is going to commit a crime. You have to understand that police officers get a split second to decide what they're going to do. And when I decide to express my right, that may cause another problem. I'll give you an example. Young man, 1971, I'm walking from across campus. I'm going to my apartment. As I walk across, I see a police car with 2 white guys. And they say, hey, come here, we need to talk to you. I answered them for what for? Why? This is the 70s. This is after the riots. This is after Kent State. So I'm saying, why are you approaching me? So they got in their car. They rode over. They stepped out, and the guy said, look around. There's nobody out here but you or us. If something happened to you, we're going to investigate. And I got the meaning of what he was saying. You're out here by yourself. And now you got to remember, in 1970, there's no cell phone. There's no people out there filming me or whatever. And I caught that meaning right there. And the officer said, it was a U-Haul across from our apartment. He said, someone broke into some trucks here. We just wanted to know if you saw anyone. So, again, I changed from what to, no, sir, I didn't.
Okay, we have a list watcher. Hi, Rhonda Jones. She wants to know, do you feel that to start to regain the community's trust, would it be helpful to have more officers canvassing the neighborhoods like they used to? Do you think the officers going out on bikes, she should say bikes, walking the neighborhood, do you think that they should start to do that again?
Yes. Look, when the police departments first started, they didn't ride in cars. They walked the neighborhood. You got to know the people that owned the store, where you live. But another part of that, and a big part for us as African American, is this. Every police department in this country is, at some point or another, recruiting. They can't recruit African American women or men. I don't want to be the police. So when you complain about a police department being predominantly Caucasian and no African Americans sign up to take the test or try to be police officers, you can't blame that guy that's got a GED, that's able to pass that test and get a job, because the guy with the college degree who doesn't have a job decided, well, I don't want to be the police. Every time there's a recruitment, there's always a shortage of African American males and females to take that test. I don't want to be the police because everybody will think I'm a sellout. I don't want to be the police because, this or that. But the thing of it is if you want to change the culture of the police in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city, you have to become a part of that department. You can't have a city that is predominantly African American and have a predominantly Caucasian police department. You can't blame the guy that lived out in Bay Village or Westlake who took the test in Cleveland and became a Cleveland police officer when the guys in Cleveland didn't even take the test.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought of it that way, so I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. I think, though, that people, like police officers, do need to get to know the neighborhood again, whether you're white, Chinese, black, whatever it is. I think that you need to get to know the people in the neighborhood that you're policing. A lot of times you just show up to these jobs, it's a job. I think and I have to say, back when you were a cop in the beginning, that you cared about the neighborhood that we were in. I remember us getting caught with you circling the neighborhood with us being where we weren't supposed to be, and you coming around and circling the neighborhood. I do recall that. But more and more we're seeing where it seems like the officers are scared to go into those neighborhoods and learn about those people. And I feel like it should be a challenge, and it should be placed back on them that if you're going to work in this neighborhood, if this neighborhood is going to pay your salary, then you should get to know those people.
Well, when I came on, there was a different mindset. One of the things was that the people who came out of the academy, they generally tried to put them in the neighborhoods where they came from. Mm-hmm. So if you lived in the 4th District and you came to the police academy, they tried to put you back in the 4th District because you had that relationship already established. That may not be the case now, because that goes back to what we were talking about recruiting. If the majority of recruits come from outside the city of Cleveland, it doesn't make any difference where you put them, because they're not going to have that relationship. And again, because of the dynamics of the political things that were going on now, that guy from Bay Village is not going to try to get to know the people up on Kinsman. Mm-hmm. He's just, because of his upbringing, because of his, household and the way things are, he's going to go to work and do his job. And if my job says sit at 116th and Kinsman and ticket people going through their light, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to get out and go meet the store owner at the corner of 116th and Kinsman, because that's not my job. And who knows? Those people may not want me there anyway.
Okay, I wanted to, Delta Smith brings up a good point. I know you and I had this conversation before the show. I did a little bit of research, and I told you, I was like, I'm researching this a little bit about the training stats. Back in the 70s, there was more training for police officers in the community, and it seemed like as the chart got closer to the 2000s, the amount of training that police officers received seemed to be less and less and less. And so I'm wondering, like, why, if we're evolving with time, will we not increase the amount of training or the amount of learning that they're getting instead of decreasing? There was a significant amount of change in, like, where you went to the police academy for maybe a year versus like they only did a couple months. What's the change in that they are not getting the additional training they need in the evolution of time?
See, I would disagree with that. When I first came on the job as a rookie and a young police officer, the training at one time was you went, you got the job, you got sworn in, you got a gun, and they sent you out to the district. That was the training. And for the time you were there, someone who was already a police officer showed you how to be one. So there was no year.
So do you think there's no mentors then? Like, are we not having other officers that have been on the job long enough mentor these officers that are being released in the community now?
Well, let me give you an example. When you're saying mentoring gives the impression that there's a time for me to point to you that say this is what that is. When you come on the job and it's your first day on the street and the call comes in, male shot at 79th and Garden Valley, there's no mentoring. It's everybody up for himself. So the person that's driving, you're a two-man car, the person that's driving is trying to tell you, look, keep your eyes open. This may be going on. We don't know if this is a single person or whatever. So when you're talking about mentoring in an educational aspect, in a classroom, yes, I can point to you and say, this may be wrong, the way you did that or that. You may get mentored after a situation. You may go down there and get this bad guy you don't. And your partner may say, hey, Nanika, before you get out of the car, make sure you look around and see what's going on because that person may still be there. That's mentoring, but that's after the fact. You don't have time to say, okay, wait, stop. Let's look around first and see because someone's calling for help. Someone's calling for help. We heard a lady screaming down there. You don't have time to say, okay, well, we're going to walk this way and make sure that we're looking around. You have to respond to what's going on. So in terms of training, again, the job description and the expectations have changed. In the 80s, and you respond and you see a person that you eating lunch with, a person that you talk to every day, that person's laying there. And now we go back and we get training. We go, what mistakes did this person make? Did they make any at all? That's the ultimate lesson, because that person doesn't go home again. Now you've got that lesson. That's not a lesson that you walk away from and say, well, you know what, I'll take the test on this next week and maybe I'll pass it. When that person is down, you learn from that. How did they come into that run? How did they get the information? What did they do? How were they prepared? That's the education that no one sees. I understand that society feels that the police are abusing their power. They're doing more than they should be doing. But here's the one thing. What may be a simple domestic violence call because your husband is yelling at you has turned into life-threatening situations, not just for you, but for police officers.
I'm going to tell you to hold that next thought. Hey, hot people, we're going to take a short break. Tune into the conversation because I promise it's going to get fiery with my dad. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Elevations Radio, your station for uplifting lifestyle and wellness talk radio.
have people? Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, you are in the studio with Nanika Ansari. And to the right of me is Officer Jamal Ansari, a.k.a. Dad. We're in the studio talking about policing our community. And so Rhonda, again, asked, she says, Officer Ansari, while on the force, how did you distress situations? And how do you feel that some officers are not distressing situations now? Why aren't they distressing them? How did you do it? And why do you think it's not happening now?
Well, the biggest thing when you're the police is that you have to understand that everybody wants to be respected, whether it be a child molester, a rapist, whether it be a bank president. Everyone has an idea of respect for themselves. So you have to be able to determine what's respectful about them. Some people may think it's disrespectful if you step too close to them, or if you step in front of them. So maybe I'm talking to someone and I notice that they tend to get a little antsy when I'm standing in front of them. Maybe I stand to the side. I don't put myself in danger, but I try to diffuse this. A lot of people feel that they're being restrained if you stand in front of them and talk to them. They feel that they can't go anywhere. They don't have that right. You have to be cognizant of where you are, of the way people react in that neighborhood. You go to a neighborhood where, some people may think that, if you talk too loud, you're putting me down. Mm-hmm. You ask me, what's my name? They may say, well, wow, you're making me look bad in front of the people. So, what's your name, sir? Mm-hmm. So you have to understand.
It's a matter of respect. Like, we have to respect each other.
Right.
The police have to show respect to the people in the community, and the community also, in turn, has to show respect to the police again. So during the break, we talked about, I'm sorry, Dad, say it again. We were talking about the training and the on-site. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, one of the things we were talking about during the break was we're talking about recruiting.
That's what it was. Thank you.
And here's how I became a police officer. We lived in the Mount Pleasant area. It's a nice area. Everybody owned their home. 2 or 3 times a week, there's a stolen car strip in front. It's parked out in front of our house. And I look on the ground. I can see the transmission fluid to the place where it came from. And you call the police, and they couldn't trace this back. They didn't see that trail coming out of their garage. And so one day, 2 black police officers, African-American officers, came, and I asked them, you guys don't see that? And the one guy, fortunate for me, had known me since I was 15 years old. He said, you know what? You want to take care of that problem? Take the test. Take the test and do it yourself. If you want to make your community better, then take the test. I took the test, and I got the job, and of course, like I said, I was living in the 4th district. I was assigned to it. And that car thief that lived down the street from me, I made his life miserable. I parked in front of his house all the time. He called because he couldn't get his stolen cars out of the garage because I was parked there. So a lot of times when we complain about the police, we fail to understand that in order to make a difference, we have to take a risk.
Yeah, but that's how we were taught growing up. In order to make a difference in our neighborhood, we had to be the difference in our neighborhood. And so, you guys, I'm going to change the conversation a little bit up. Please feel free to call back and ask Dad any questions about being a police officer. But something came up the other day, and I was talking to my dad, and I said, well, maybe we should talk about this when we get you on the show. And it's about the number of young men being killed in our neighborhoods, not by the hands of the police. It's by people in our neighborhoods. And so I've had to explain to my son 2 times within the last 2 weeks how 2 of his friends were shot, and we don't know the reason why. They were good kids, and I'm not just saying that. My dad and I have this conversation all the time, that people always want to talk about how good you were once you were gone, but these were kids that were in the community, 16 and 17 years old, at the rec, playing basketball, living their lives. One kid was actually shot after attending the funeral of the other young man that had been shot. And so I wanted him to talk to us about policing our own community, policing our kids, because if you are the mother of a drug dealer and you know that he's dealing drugs in your neighborhood, you are a drug dealer too. That's just my own take on it. We have to take some responsibility as our community to start saying, like, you know what, I don't want this happening to my community. I want to save my son. I want to protect my son. And so how can I do that? We have to become active again in the community. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, we've had, at least I could think at least of 10 people who I've seen on the Cleveland Remembrance page who are young African-American males who are at the prime of their lives who are no longer with us. Why are we seeing that now as an epidemic?
Well, part of it, at my age, at 66, at my age, what I see is that we no longer value life. When I was a young kid, you walk down the street, I walk out in the street, my next door neighbor would call my name, and I'd have to answer. And it depended on how I answered, if I was going to get in trouble or not. What are you doing in the street? Nothing. And that meant to get on the sidewalk. It didn't mean they told me to get on the sidewalk. So we've got these things in our home now where, excuse me, I can bring home a bicycle that I traded with you and tell my mother, hey, I traded my bike. I couldn't do that in those days. My mother said, that's not the bike I bought you. Whatever you traded, you go get it back. So you got kids now, like you're talking about somebody who's a dope dealer. You got a 16-year-old that can come home with a pair of big baller shoes, a pair of Jordans, don't have a job, and everybody accepts, who gave that to you? Well, Mr. Jones gave it to me for cleaning out his garage. So he gave you a $450 pair of tennis shoes for cleaning out his garage, and people accept that. So when you start to accept these things, nothing has value. No one challenges to say, wait a minute, how did you get that? You don't have a job. How can you bring something? You can't bring something in my house that you didn't pay for or I didn't pay for, especially if you don't have the money for it. So you have a society now where, like you said, if you're the mother of a drug dealer and you know he deals drugs, fine. Or the people say, well, they're not bad drug dealers. They keep the bad drug dealers out of our neighborhood. Well, that's called eliminating competition. You're not helping to see.
You're monopolizing the situation.
Right. But some people say because I know little Jamal and he deals drugs, he don't let those bad guys that shoot people come to the neighborhood, but you still got a drug dealer.
So then I want to ask you this. How do we talk to our children? How do we talk to our sons about losing their friends in their community? What are we saying to them when it's them that's taking them out the game?
Well, first of all, you don't talk. You sit that child down and you ask that child, how do you feel? What did you know about this person? See, everybody goes on Facebook and all this stuff now and say, that's my cuz, that's my boy, and that's all that. They don't even know the person's last name. So we've got a society that claims relationships that are associations. You're not my friend. I know you, but I don't know of you. One of the things that you would hear people my age say, I know what my kids will do when I'm around. I know what I expected them to do when I'm not there, but I can't say that they won't do something. Because if I'm standing there, you're not going to do it. If you think I'm going to find out about it, you're probably not going to do it. But if you think you can get away with it, people do what they can do.
And so I'm thinking of when we're talking to Jamil, because I remember calling you up and I was like, what am I supposed to say to him? He's lost 2 friends in 2 weeks. What am I supposed to tell him? Can you give us at least 3 tips to tell these parents on how to talk to their kids when talking about death of, not their colleague, but their classmates, their friends, people that, even though if I play basketball with you, if you're at the rec and we play basketball together, we meet up every Saturday. I may not have ever been to your house. We may not even go to the same school, but I respect you because we do this thing together every week. How are we talking what 3 tips can you give to those parents talking to those kids who have lost friends recently?
Okay, the first one is know who you're calling your friend. Know the background of that person. Like you said, you don't know their name, but this kid may be the good kid at the rec because there's somebody there to keep him in line, but in his neighborhood, he may be someone that gets involved with things. So know who you're calling your friend. Second, the second most important thing you can do with your kid is to make sure that your child brings his friends to meet you. Because if I don't know who your friends are, you can have any friends. I always say this when people say, well, I didn't do that because you weren't going to approve of it, or I didn't introduce this person because I didn't think you were going to like them. What is it that I wouldn't like about them? What is it that about you that they are not like, that I wouldn't like? That's the second thing. You've got to have an understanding that what goes in your head comes in my house, and I need to know what's going in your head. The third thing is to explain to your child that, unfortunately, the society has moved away from close relationships. They moved away from playing with people in your neighborhood. That people who come to the rec center come from all around. We're no longer a society where you're tied down to the 10 blocks of your neighborhood. You can go anywhere in the city, anywhere, and do anything. You can go to any community center. So I may be banned from the community center at Ken Johnson, but you know what? I can go to Collinwood Rec. They don't know me there, so I can be what I want to be there until they find out what I am. So you need to know who your kid's dealing with. You need to try to meet them so you can make a judgment for yourself. Your child may see the good side of this person, and you may say, you know what, no. And again, they have to understand that society has not limited their exposure. So the bad kid from Kinsman or from Cleveland Heights or Beechwood can come straight down on 79th and Garden Valley and cause problems, then go back home.
And not be a problem.
That's right.
So I think that is, I know for me as a parent of a young man, it was frightening to see that on there, because I'm like, here it is. I'm trusting that in this community, there's going to be people that are looking out for him. You want to think that that's the type of community that we live in. And sometimes it is, but more than likely it's not. So how can we as a people that may not be involved with community leaders, that may not be involved in community events, how can we get involved and have our children involved in the community? Because what I see is a lack of us giving our children things to do. A lack of, the Boys and Girls Club used to be a thing. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts used to be a thing. Like, my dad will tell you, I probably was how many scout leaders. Mm-hmm. I've become a coach to be involved with my kids. What else can we do as parents to get involved in the community and to bring our kids alongside us?
Here goes probably the most obvious and silliest thing about know your neighbors. You live on a street, you got in a block, you got 15 to 20 houses. How many of your neighbors do you know? Do you know their name? Do you know who they are? You may know the person on the right and the left of you or the person in front of you, but what about the guy that's 6 houses down? One of the things you run into is, when you go on the sexual predators, the child offenders, you find out that 2 or 3 of your neighbors are those people. Yet before you went on there, you didn't notice. So part of the community getting back and taking back the community is knowing who's on your street. Don't just know the guy that's next door to you. What about the guy 10 houses down? At least try to find out. Because without knowing this, your child could be 4 doors from your house and you not know anything about it. Because you don't know those people.
And so I think that's a big issue. I know for me, I'll go knock on your door and I'll meet you. And if I think the house is like, okay, you know what, you can't come over here and play no more, it's a wrap for you as far as that. And I do remember growing up that you and Mom would be like, no, so-and-so can't come around no more because they got a little bit too much going on in their homes. But we don't have that anymore. And so I think what it comes to is, like you said, you have a mentoring program, that we're involved in the mentoring program. I think it's a matter of us as parents getting back in our community. And if you see that there's a need for something and it's not in the community, then you have to create it. I get it. I talk to people all the time that say we're too busy or there's too much going on or I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul or I'm doing all of this. But it's a matter of if we don't take back our communities, then like my dad said, we're handing over our communities to people who don't care necessarily about our communities. They're just working a job in our communities. And so I think it's we have to be vigilant as parents and say, hey, who's your mom? Who's your dad? How many blocks? I remember we had a young man. I think I called my dad up. I called my dad a lot. And I'm like, he was outside sitting on our porch. And I'm like, I'm waiting for his parents. He's like, no, I'm just going to sit outside here and wait. And I'm like, no, come in. And I'm like, let me call your parents and find out when they're coming back and stuff like that. But parents, especially, I would have to say if you're not the mom or dad, if you're the step parent or something like that, you have to care about those kids just as much as the parent does. It takes a village, and I don't know how many times I can say this. It takes a village to really raise a child. It takes so many different people, and parents, it's up to us to determine who is in our village. You expose your children to people who should care about them. You should expose them to people who, if they're doing something wrong, will call them into correction. And I know growing up in a household with this guy that we were called into correction on many occasions, but I think we were better adults for doing so. So, Dad, to wrap this up, I want to know, because I know growing up we read a lot of books all the time. If we were to tell some young man or some young lady what book they should read to kind of spark a fire in them to get involved in the community, what book would you tell them to read?
Well, see, that's a difference for me. One of the books that I thought about when we were talking about this, and I can't recall the author, but it was a book called Black Like Me. And what it was this... I remember either he was a light-skinned black male or white male who in the 50s, 40s, or 50s or 60s, he basically put on blackface, and he traveled around the country as a black man, and he discovered what America was for a black man versus being a white man, because he had that experience of being free to walk into a restaurant, to do all these things and not be questioned, to walk down the street and not have the police called on him. And then as a black man, he saw a different light, that he couldn't walk down the street, that he couldn't go most places, he couldn't go to the bathroom. So when you read a book like that, and especially in this day and age when we think that everything is everything, you find out that we're still 50 or 60 years behind, that you can't go everywhere you want to go. You've got the right to, but when I'll give you an example. I'm out shopping, I'm sitting in my car, it's a sunny day, it's warm outside, I got the window rolled down, and this guy pulls up next to me. He's an older white male. He gets out of his car, he looks at me, he locks the door, he hits the security lock on his door. He walks about 10 feet away, he turns around, he comes back and he checks all the doors. Here. So, and for African Americans, and whether you're male or female, you've all experienced this. You go into a place and you walk in and there are non-African Americans there and they're female, and the minute you walk in, everybody all of a sudden has to clutch their purse. Mm-hmm. Or you walk in and you get on the elevator and you're the only black person, you're a black male, and there are 10 people of other races on that, and all of a sudden the 10 of them can fit in one corner. That one person is going to do something all 10. So this is what society is. So when you want to read something, you read things that relate to that type, so you understand the reaction of society to you. It's not you, it's society. And it's not the police, it's everyone. So you just can't say, well, the police are the ones that are doing it. No.
It's everybody.
Everybody. People call the police on you because you're walking down the street. Well, he's not from this neighborhood. We don't know him. I may even moved in last week. How do you know if I don't belong there? But that's a call the police get. He's a black guy. He don't belong here. He's walking down the street. There's nothing illegal about that in the United States.
Well, hot people, you've met the man behind the legend. No, I'm so ecstatic that my dad was able to come on today and to drop some knowledge for us. If you guys have questions for him, I will be able to reach him because he is my dad. Please go ahead and send them to justonehotmom@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to have him either on again or he'll do a Facebook Live with me and he'll answer your questions there. Dad, thank you for coming on today, and thank you for, I know we probably spent like 3 weeks, like going back and forth with each other, not practicing, but like, are you going to be calm? Am I going to be calm? So I just wanted to thank you for being your calm, gentle self on the show today. My dad brought up some good points, community. It's up to us to take back to our community. It's up to us to make sure that our kids are educated and culturally aware of what's going on in our society. Too often we rely on schools, we rely on social workers, we rely on the media, we rely on everybody else to help our children grow and be the people that they are supposed to be, but we don't rely on us enough. It's up to us to create the village for our children so that they have a model of the type of citizens they should be. And he mentioned that we should also take our police. We own the police. If you have a mind frame of that you own something, you become active in it, you become interested in it. It's up to you to become active in your community, to make sure that your police are following rules and regulations, and when they're not, calling them to the carpet and not just going to some visual, not being active for a couple of days, but it's really pressing on so that you live in a community that you can be proud of and that you can feel safe in. I wanted to remind you guys again about the Mommy Connect. It'll be on November 30th, 4 to 7 p.m. at Beechwood Library. If you live in the Cleveland area, please feel free to come and attend. You can go over and register on the Just One Hot Mom Facebook page. Please tune in next week because there will be Letitia Hammond. She's going to be on she is the Letitia Mathis. She is from I Am 3D Woman, and she's going to be dropping some knowledge on how to heal yourself as a woman, mind, body, and spirit. It will be a pre-recorded show because we are on Thanksgiving break. Hallelujah. Thank you all for always tuning in, and please check out Me and the Hottest Kids. We are now up on iTunes, so go download our podcast. Check us on out over at the YouTube channel, and as always, you can catch us over on justonehotmom.com. Dad, any final words for us?
Just be yourself.
Be yourself.
Everyone's a good person. You get to not be a good person when you're trying to be someone that someone else wants you to be. You've got an inner self that tells you this is right, that's wrong. Just be yourself.
All right, hot people, you've been tuned into Just One Hot Mom. You've been lifted and elevated. Catch you soon.
Well, watch out for that thump. That what? Sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is probably what you say. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is probably what you say. When you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is probably what you say.
This pain I feel in my chest, 'cause of stupid me. I must confess, I ruined everything. Oh.